Okay. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Yo Antaha Pravishya Mama Vacha Imam Prashuptam Sanjivayati Akila Shakti Daraswadamnam अन्यांष्टहस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम् लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So good evening, everyone, for the 22nd session on Katha Upanishad. So today is quite an exciting program. I think we have a brief 20-25 minutes revision contemplation on Katha Upanishad, and immediately we go into Ganesha Chintana, which is a special program for today. And the material that we are dealing with in Katha Upanishad is actually extremely relevant, and I would actually say that the timing is perfect. That Yama is teaching Nachiketa about the Supreme Brahman, about how he controls the jivas in their various states of consciousness. Yama is in that context at this point. Just to give you a reminder here, we are doing second Adhyaya, we are doing the first Valli, where Yama is still so impressed with Nachiketa's enthusiasm to know about the Supreme Being or Brahman, that he is giving him more and more information. Yama is saying, look, I'm really fortunate to have an enthusiastic student like you, and I can't stop but teach you more and more about this Brahman. Whatever I know, I'm going to teach you. So with that spirit and enthusiasm is what Yama is actually starting the second Adhyaya. So we have navigated a few verses, and last week, no, not last week, 2 weeks ago, we did these two verses that I put in green box. Yeah. Ya eshu sukteshu jagrati kamam kamam purusho nirmamanaha tadeva shukram tad brahma tadeva amrutam uchyate tasmin lokaha shritaha sarve tadu na atyeti kaschana etadvai tat swapnantam jagritantam cha ube ye yena anupashyati mahantam vibhum Atmanam Matva Dhiro Na Sochati. Okay, so these are the two beautiful verses that we did fortnight ago, and today we have. I think we'll just deal with one verse. Ya imam madvadam veda atmanam jivamantikat ishanam bhutabhavyasya natato vijugupsate etadvaitat. So we will do this verse and then go directly to Ganesh Chintana. So what was this first verse? Ya esha sukteshu jagratihi kamam kamam purusho nirmamanaha. So sukteshu we know is sleep. Sleep has got two components, a sleep with dreams and dreamless sleep. So those are the two subdivisions within sleep that we all agree, neurophysiology agrees, and our Vedic philosophers always knew that the sleep is of two components. Nowadays we call it as REM sleep and NREM sleep, but our Vedic rishis used to call it as dreamless state and dreamful sleep. So in this verse, Yama is talking about ya esha sukteshu jagratihi kamam kamam purusho nirmamanaha. So he's talking about two states here, which I've kind of mentioned it for our own benefit. So the one is the dream state of consciousness, that is sukteshu. Jagrati is the wakeful state of consciousness. Now, in the dream state, we know that our external sense organs are all closed and we are not in contact with the external world. So that sensory information from the external world is not getting through our indriyas or the gross indriyas, and they are not getting processed through the brain and the mind, and then the jiva then perceives it. So that is not what is happening in the dreamless, in the dreamful state, because our external indriyas, the gross indriyas, are closed. So at this point, what is happening? The brain is still carrying on with its electrical activity. The mind is still active. Yeah. So the brain and the mind, from a Vedic philosopher's perspective, brain and the mind are two different entities, but they work together. Okay, so the brain is still active because any living being, the brain is active. The mind is still active in the dream state, and the mind is still sending input into the Jivatman, and the Jivatman is seeing the dream. Okay, so that is what is going on in the dream state, and our Yama is saying, Kamam Kamam Purusho Nirmamanaha. The various dreams that we get in the dream state of our sleep, do we compose the dream? Do we compose the plots in our dream? No, we don't. We may think we do, but actually absolutely not. Dreams just happen and we are just a silent witness to the dreams. So our Vedic rishis were asking these questions: how does dream happen? Why am I getting this particular type of themes in my dream? And their conclusion was, nothing in life, nothing in life is actually a random event. Everything has a purpose and a sentient principle behind it. And our Vedic rishis concluded that that sentient being that controls the dream, they labeled it as Purusha. And we know Purusho Havai Narayanaha, as discussed in Narayana Upanishad. Brahma Shabdashta Vishnaveva, as Acharya has said. So if we link all this, then we understand that this is the supreme Brahman who's actually composing the dream. Now there is a slight typo here. The form that controls the dream is called the Tejasa form of the Supreme. Okay, so that is the dream state. Now in the wakeful state, we are all very familiar with what's happening in the wakeful state. In the wakeful state, which is called Jagrati state, sensory input is going through the gross body, gets processed in the brain, then the mind perceives it, and the mind sends the input into the jiva, and the jiva is conscious of what is happening in the external world. So that is a sequence of events. And even in this state, the philosopher is very clear and says, even this conscious state, you are dependent on Purusha. Because in the wakeful state, we may think that we are in control of lots of things that happen around us, but the sad fact is, we are actually not in control of what's happening around us. We think we are, and that is the reason why we suffer in samsara. But in the wakeful state, in the wakeful state, the jiva is not in full control at this point of time. Harish, you've raised your hands.
Yeah, does that also imply then, Madhuji, that the dreams have to carry a lot more like divine meaning than we perhaps give it credit for?
Sorry, Harish, I didn't quite capture your...
No, does it mean that if the dream is something that is shown by the Brahman, then does that also mean that sometimes many of our dreams are quite random? Does that actually mean that we may not comprehend it, but there is actually some divine essence in that?
Yeah, absolutely, Harish. Yeah, no doubt about this, in the sense that we may not understand the dream. So there are several points about why our Vedic philosophers talk about dream. Number one, dream is not an illusion. It is not an imaginary thing. It is actually a real event that happens in real space and time due to chemical reactions or whatever that happens in the mind, as you know. So that is the first point. The other point is the plots that we get in dream. Now we know, the psychologists tell us that the dreams have an inner meaning. So these are the imprints in the subconscious mind that comes out into our consciousness during the dream state. And that has some kind of a subtler meaning that exactly is there. And in fact, there is so Harish, I may remind you about a particular sutra in Vedanta Sutra. It's called Sande Srishtirahahi. So you see the Bhaktipada, on the of the Brahma Sutra, where Veda Vyasa talks about the Sande Srishtirahahi, and then he cites evidence from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, and so on, where the Vedic philosophers talk about what is the causal efficiency of dreams and what do they signify. And in fact, many Upanishads go on to talk about, if you see this in your dream, that implies that, and so on and so forth. So the answer to your question is resounding yes, that dreams do have an inner meaning. We may not understand it, but they do have an inner meaning. Perhaps maybe the divine is sending us some message for us to understand, but whether we are understanding or not, I don't know. So coming back to the Jagrati state, so that state is very useful, very easy for us, because we think we are independent, but actually we are not. The fact that we think that we assume we are independent is the reason why we are in suffering and in samsara. That is the conclusion of all the Vedic rishis about this wakeful state. So in both these states, ya esha supteshu jagratihi kamam kamam purusho nirmamanaha. So who is that Purusha who controls these two states? Tad eva shukram, tad brahma, Tadeva Amrutam Uchyate. So here Yama gives so many names to the Supreme. Go back and revise those. He calls this Brahman as Shukram. He calls him as Brahma. He calls him as Amrutam. And then he says, Tasmin lokaha shritaha sarve. Everything in this world is dependent on him. Tadu na atyeti kashtana. Nothing can surpass it. And it is the supreme independent entity. So that is really is the meaning of tad u. Tad u stresses, it emphasizes. Tat u na atyeti kashtana etadvaitat. So that guy who is your antaryamin, who is controlling your states of consciousness here, is the same Brahman who is there in moksha, who also controls your conscious state there. Okay, and in the next verse, this is interesting. Then he goes, Swapnantam Jagritantam cha ube yena anupashyati. So then he says, between Jagrati and dream states, there are also intermediate states of consciousness, like the sleepwalker, the daydreamer, and there are so many other states. And Yama reminds us that even in these states, it is the Supreme that is controlling it. Who is the chap? He is Mahantam. He is Vibhum, all-pervasive, Atmanam, your Swami, your Antaryami. Matva Diro na shochati. He who knows, the brave, the knowledgeable who knows him does not get any sadness. Na shochati. So in this verse, Yama has given us an overview of the states of consciousness of the jivas. And we have done similar verses in Mandukya Upanishad. And it's just worth reciting this because this is going to be the key topic for discussion for the rest of the class. So what did Varuna say in Mandukya Upanishad? Jagarati sthano bahihi pragnaha shaptangaha yeko navimshati mukaha stulabuk vaishwanaraha pratamaha padaha. Swapnasthanaha antaha prajnaha saptangaha ekona vimshati mukaha pravivikta bhukt tejaso dvitiya padaha. So here Varuna has told us that the first two states of consciousness, that supreme being, who here is called as Purusho Nirmamanaha by Katha Upanishad, that Purusha, that supreme being that controls, is described further in Mandukya Upanishad, where it is described that this form of the Brahman has got 7 angas, 7 extremities. Yeko navimshati mukaha, 19 faces. That's what the Upanishad tells us. Of course, there are a whole lot of metaphorical, inner philosophical meanings as to why Varuna has said that form of the Supreme has got 19 faces and 7 angas. Okay, but that particular form of the Supreme controls the dream state as well as the wakeful state. So what is this 19 face and 7 angas that Mandukya Upanishad is talking about, which Yama has very briefly said, Purusho Nirmamanaha. So that 19-faced 7 arms, how does the 7 arms? Let's look at 7 arms or 7 extremities. So that is a Vishwambara Murti form of the Supreme that is described in the Vedas. Okay. So that supreme form has got 7 angas, 4 hands, 2 legs, and a trunk right in the middle. Trunk. And it has got 19 faces. And the 19 faces are spanned across either side. And in the middle, the 10th face is a face that looks like an elephant. Okay, so this 19th face 7 angas, which the Vedas describe as Vishwambara Murti, is described here by Varuna very, very clearly. And our Yama says that same person is the Purusha who is Nirmamanaha. And we know from all the studies that we have done, Purusho Havai Narayana, Brahma Shabdashta Vishnaveva. So we know all these linkings. That the Vedas, the Samanvaya of the Veda is very clear, and it talks about the same thing again and again. It is only us who don't understand it. And for us to understand, that's the reason why Veda Vyasa has composed Vedanta Sutra, for us to interpret the Vedas in the right perspective. So I hope this makes sense, because this is interesting. That being that controls the conscious states of the jiva has got 19 faces and 7 angas, and the 10th face is the face of Ganesha. Hold on to the face of a Gajamukha. Hold on to that idea, because as you know, Ganesh Chaturthi is coming up next week and we are all going to be celebrating that. So we will have a lot of discussions as to what that actually means in the rest of this talk. Okay, so this is the verse for today, which is a brief verse, and I'll close my presentation after this. So Yama says, look, there is this Purusho Nirmamanaha who is Shaptangaha Eko Navimshati Mukaha. He is there, he is controlling. And then again, Yama is reminding us, and he has also done this before, of what does this Supreme Being do sitting inside the Jivas when the Jivas are up and about doing various things and apparently enjoying. They are bhoktas of some type and they're doing that. So what does the Supreme Being do in that point? Ya imam madvadham Veda atmanam jivamantikat Ishanam bhutabhavyasya natato vijugupsate etadvaitat. So very neat and a very beautiful verse. Ya imam Veda. So this is easy. Yaha imam Veda. Yaha imam. He who knows that all our states of consciousness is under the supreme control. He who knows this. Ya imam Veda. What does he know? That he knows that the Supreme controls its states of consciousness, but also knows Veda Madvadam. Okay, so what is that Madvadam? Why has Yama used that word Madvada? And among various schools, these kind of words actually capture one's imagination. So Madhu Adha. So Madvada, the etymology of Madvadam is Madhu and Adam. Madhu is Ananda. Yeah, Madhu is nectar, sweetness, Ananda. Madhu is Ananda. Yes, we know there was a Rakshasa called Madhu, and that is why he is called Madhusudan. That is different there. But in the Vedic language, primarily Madhu means Ananda. Adam means somebody who eats or enjoys. Yeah. So Yama is clarifying, yes, that Supreme Brahman is inside you, but he is not some zero Sunya entity who is just sitting there doing nothing. He's doing lots of things. Number one, he's making an account of all the things that you're doing. If you are doing things that are towards prayers, that goes to your karmic imprints. He will make a note of that, ensure those karmic imprints go on to your Linga Sharira. Number one. But at the same time, if you are doing some shreyas, if you're doing some activities towards your own spiritual progress, then the Supreme Being also notes that. And this is what Katha Upanishad had described in the previous verses. You may remember this very important verse that we discussed. Ritam pibantau sukrutasya loke guham pravishhtau parame pararde. Okay. Ritam pibantau. So we read, I just want to remind, what is ritam? Pibantau means enjoys. Ritam means ananda we get from yatartha jnana. The people who are true seekers, who are towards knowledge, they will know that if they learn something new and if they understand some new concept, it gives them happiness. Yeah. So studying and getting new knowledge is not a chore. It actually gives happiness to people because yatartha jnana, understanding the truth, will always give us happiness. So that is what Yama has said in the previous verse, Ritam Pibantau. The ananda we get from yatartha jnana, punya phala, fruits of good deed. Okay, and we have discussed that before, that ananda that we get, we experience that ananda, but do we experience that ananda independently, or we just get a fraction of the ananda because we are dependent beings? So this is one of the discussions. It's a subtler philosophy, but just stay with me on this, and I'll in the next slide I'll just explain what I actually mean. So this Brahman is sitting very close to the jiva, and Madhu Adam, he is enjoying the sweetness of Yatartha Jnana or the Punya Phala that the Jivas are doing. And where is he? Jivam Antikat. He is very close to me as my Antaryaman. He is inside us, right? He is very close to us. And what is he? He is an Atmanam. Atma, there are multiple meanings, as you know. But two things, if you keep in your mind forever, that will be good. One meaning of Atma as Antaryaman, and a second meaning of Atma as my Swami, my controller. Okay, so here that becomes very relevant, that this guy who is very close to me, who is my controller, what he is doing is, yes, he is letting me do various things. And when I do Shreyas, I'm getting some Ananda. And even that Ananda, he also enjoys it. Okay, and that is what we have done in Gita verses. So I don't know if one of you might want to take maybe one verse, maybe we take Gita 15 verse 9 and recite that. Yeah, or you take the, let's take 529. Okay, who wants to go for 529? And we can quick recitation on this, please. Okay, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam. Sir. Yeah, okay. Neetaji, go for it.
Yeah. भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसां सर्वलोकमहेश्वरं सहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमृच्छति.
Very nice. So this is very, very clear. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam. I am the bhokta of all the yajna and the tapas that everybody does. Yeah. So what is it that bhokta does he, when we give naivedya, when we offer fruits and flowers and food and whatever we do, when we do puja, does he come and eat it? No, that is not what the bhoktrutva of Brahman is. And Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is the evidence for us. And Brihadaranyaka Upanishad in the 4th chapter, this is discussed in detail. What is it that we offer? Tasmad esha pravivikta ahara taraha. Okay, the Rishi there talks about this. God accepts your dedication and your submission, your spirit of submission and your spirit of dedication, your spirit of admiration of the Supreme. Those are all the things that he accepts, and he enjoys that, and he likes that. Yeah. So that is what the meaning there is when Krishna says Bhoktaram. And in the previous verse, Madhvadam is what Yama has said. So then we all know the answer for this, but I just want to put a question there. But then in Mundaka Upanishad, the Varuna has said, not Varuna, Angirasa has said, Dvasuparna Sayuja Sakai Samana Vriksham Parishashva Jate Tayor Anyaha Pippalam Swadatti Anashna Nanyaha Abhichakashiti. Whereas this Upanishad says that this Jiva bird, which is there in this cave, is eating all the material things and thinks that it's happy. Whereas this bird is just a silent witness, and it is just watching this bird, the other bird, in complete amazement, saying that what on earth is this fellow doing and wasting his time. So how do you reconcile this? Here in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, he said, Tasmadesha pravivikta ahara taraha, that this fellow is supposed to enjoy whatever this fellow is enjoying. But this verse is not telling us that. So who is going to answer that question, which is quite important for us to understand as to why we do puja, why we do homa, why we do offerings to the Supreme? Who is going to take that? Anybody wants to answer that question? Okay, no worries. A little bit of silence today. So what that essentially says, yeah, okay, go for it.
He only accepts the good things and not the bitter fruits.
Excellent. Fantastic, Sushru. Thanks for reminding all of us. Because if this particular bird was going to the temple or was actually doing satsang or was actually doing a havan in praise of the Vedic Supreme, then this chap who's sitting next to him would also be enjoying that. But what is this fellow doing, this Jiva bird? He is just enjoying the material fruits. And our Brahman will not accept that. So that is exactly what Sushrut has said. And in fact, Acharya cites this as a very clear example. Shubham pibanti asau nityam na ashubham sa harihi pibet. Okay? Making it very clear that how do you reconcile all this? That if Brahman doesn't accept any material things, then what does he accept and so on? And when does he accept? What are the criteria? So that is all made very, very clear. So when he has said, ya imam madvadam veda atmanam jivamantikat, so who is that person who is very close to you? Ishanam. And when is he an Ishanam? Bhutabhavyasa. And when somebody knows that truth, na tato vijugupsate yetadvaitat. So it's a very logical sequence and an analysis by Yama. So what is Ishanam? Ishanam, again, it's a complicated word. Ishanam plus anaha, Ishanaha. One meaning of Ishanam is all the muktas. Anaha, controller. The controller of all mukta jivas in moksha. Who? Our Brahman. So he is called Ishanaha. Or Ishanaha can also come from Ishwaraha. Ishanam Varaha Ishwaraha. Among the muktas, who is the Sreshta? Our Brahman, who is always in mukta state. He was never in material entanglement. So that also makes him as Ishanaha. But the primary idea there is controller. Always controller. Look at Purusha Shukta. Uta Amrutatvasya Ishanaha. And the same idea is what Yama is also bringing here. Bhuta bhavyasya. Easy. Bhuta and bhavya. Bhuta means past, bhavya means future. So it is not only now. In the past also he was your controller, and in the future in your career as your souls, he is going to be your controller. In fact, there is no point in the careers of souls that this person, the Jiva Mantika, the one that is very close to the Jiva, is not a controller. He is always in close companionship with the Jiva. So what is our problem? We don't realize this. We are like that bird sitting in the tree, and then pippalam swadati. We are just doing some random things in this material world. We don't understand that there is this antaryami inside us who is controlling and protecting us all the time. But when we realize this truth, when we realize that this Ishanaha is there as our antaryamin and he is controlling us, Yama says, when you reach that point, when you have understood the truth, na tato vijugupsate. Yeah. So, imam Veda na tato vijugupsate. So, vijugupsate is a complicated Sanskrit word, but the easy way of looking at it is, think about our own current state of affairs. How do we run our lives? We go to the office, we come back, we watch some TV, and then waste our time watching endless shows. And then at 10 o'clock at night, we lock up the house. Yeah. So what do? We switch off the outside lights. We put some internal lights in the house. We lock our doors. Then we switch on the alarm. Then we go upstairs. And some of you may even be closing your door, and then you are sleeping. Why do we do all this? We do all this because we think that we need to protect ourselves from the external world. We need to be protecting ourselves all the time. And that is how we do. In fact, our whole material life, as you know, is described by the Upanishads as bhayam. It's full of fear. We are fearful of lots of things in our lives because we feel that we are not secure, because we don't have the inner knowledge. And Yama, that is what is prompting us, that once you know that that supreme being is inside you, who is controlling you, who is directing your destination, and he is there with you all the time, when that happens, you become abhayam, and you don't have to lock your house, you don't have to put the alarms, you don't have to close your door and sleep. Yeah, you can be free because you know you will be liberated at that point, in the sense that you have no fear. You will achieve a state of fearlessness, and when you have a state of fearlessness, there is nothing for you to hide. Vijigupsate is literally that. Okay, so I've got a little small quiz here. So who is this person here? There's this some boy kind of character is sitting there. Lots of other things are going on. So who is this person, and how does he fit into this verse that we are talking about? Who is going to answer that question?
Prahalad.
Very good. Who answered that?
Neeta.
Neetaji, yeah, very good. Yeah, Prahalad. So that is Prahalad. We know from Puranas, right? Prahalada, where he was never afraid because he knew that all the time there was this Antaryamin who was protecting him. So he was not afraid of all the things that Hiranyakashipu did for him. Okay, so that is the practical illustration of a situation, but here is the philosophy that Yama is talking about, and that is the reason why Bhagavata Purana is considered as a supreme scripture, because it gives you a practical examples. It gives you how to put it in your life, how to practice what philosophies like Katha Upanishad is teaching you. How do you see this happening in life? Prahalad is a classic example. So think about Prahalad when you need to think about na tato vijigupsate. So that Antaryamin who is inside you is the same chap who is in moksha. Okay, so after he said this, the verses carry on. But what I want to do at this point is, the timing is so perfect with regards to what Yama is teaching us and all the things that happens in the wakeful state and the dream state. Yeah, that is what we are talking about. And Mandukya Upanishad has said, Eko na vimshati saptangaka, eko na vimshati mukaha. And that Vedic person is described as Vishwambara Murti in the Vedas. Yeah. So his 10th face is Gajamukha. So now the question for us to think about it is, this 10th face, which looks like a Gajamukha, how is this related to our popular Ganesha that we are going to be celebrating next week? Who is this Ganesha? Who is Ganapati? And in what spirit do we need to worship Ganesha and so on? We felt as a team, so this is a right opportunity to start thinking about these issues, because we all do Ganesh Chaturthi, but I'm not sure whether we have that inner spirit in which we have to do the Ganesh Chaturthi and Ganesha one Chintana. Okay. So that is going to be the main focus of rest of the talk.